Hello and welcome to ANC Decides, the show that gives you up-to-the-minute updates, commentary and analysis building up to the ANC's elective conference. I'm your host, Mpumalanga. Let's take a look at what's making headlines. Storm brews over ANC leaders' struggle credentials. Leaders bicker over who went into exile and who stayed behind to fight the system. Cabinet reshuffle strains relations in the ANC-led tripartite alliance. SACP laments Dr. Blades Mande's axing from cabinet position. Mpumalanga disowns Cyril Ramaphosa's rally. Officials say provincial ANC chairperson David Mabuza has no knowledge of that campaign. The gloves are off in the ANC succession battle. Senior leaders are embroiled in a spat over who has stronger struggle credentials than the other. ANC Chief Whip Jackson Mthembu has hit out at presidential candidate Lindiwe Sisulu. The presidential candidate drew Mthembu's ire after she reportedly questioned Gwede Mantashe's struggle credentials. Mantashe suggested that a female deputy president be elected in order to manage ANC succession battle. Sisulu said Mantashe, who was in South Africa during the struggle, does not understand the ANC. However, Mthembu says Sisulu's comments suggest that South Africans owe their freedom to those who were in exile. The latest spat raises questions about who contributed more to the liberation struggle. Now, this is how Mthembu says Sisulu got it all wrong. Sisulu showed her political immaturity by asserting that SA's freedom is owed to the exiles. Sisulu's assertion that only those coming from exile understand the ANC is politically flawed. Mantashe was in the trenches of the labor and civic sectors in the fight against apartheid. Sisulu must go and read about the South African Revolution before she makes more stupid blunders. Meanwhile, Mantashe likens Sisulu to the royal family, taking credit for work done by its workers.
I thought her comments were unfortunate in the sense that he associates struggle with exile. And therefore, everybody who was internal here, who was actually in the belly of the beast, who was facing the enemy every day, who was disrupting point of production every day, was working for royal families that were cushioned from the enemy. I think that was very unfortunate in a comment, and I decided to leave that to an open team. You work for a royal family. You are an invisible contributor because you work for the royal family. It is only the royal family that makes a contribution. You can work for them, produce something huge, but you are an invisible contributor because you are working for them. They take the credit on your behalf because you are invisible. So I thought I must not engage in the discussion with Minister Sisulu because I think she committed a grave mistake. I don't think that is the issue. I wanted to come back and engage on the political issues raised in the run-up to conference.
We're now joined in studio by political analyst Jackie Shandu, and via Skype we're joined by Professor Andre Duvenacher. Jackie, welcome to you.
Hi. Good evening, and good evening to your viewers.
Now, it's always a pleasure to have you in studio.
Sure.
Now, this storm of struggle credentials, what is your take here? Should we really be comparing the two, who went to exile and who didn't? Because the likes of Chris Hani, although was in exile, raised concern about those what he called professional politicians, where you had professional revolutionaries that were fighting the struggle here in South Africa. But nevertheless, can we really compare who fought more?
Look, I think both Gwede Mantashe earlier today, as well as the EFF leader Julius Malema earlier summed it up well. Julius Malema started by saying that the Mandelas, the Sisulus, the Mbekis, the big political families, we don't owe them anything, which is to suggest that there is this level of sort of entitlement, you know, by the so-called political royal families, and this sense of entitlement that says, I'm a Sisulu, I'm a Mbeki, I'm a Mandela, I'm a Zuma even, therefore I matter, or what I say matter, or I have more claim to leadership, whatever the case may be. I think it is something the ANC has failed to deal with since the demise of apartheid, because of this just indiscriminate elevation, of certain figures.
Chris, you spoke about it. He spoke about it and talked about the careerism within the movement, as well as those that were not given credit, that were back in South Africa fighting just as hard. Beyond that, when they got into power, some of these people were not recognized.
No, of course. Not only that, I mean, you're speaking about a towering figure, as someone who also epitomized political integrity, Chrisan, who refused, by the way, to go to parliament, who refused any cabinet position. So this is one figure that it is very difficult to fault in terms of being genuinely concerned about the total liberation of the African people. I mean, you speak of the Steve Bikos who were never in exile, but who were brutally murdered. You speak of the 1976 high school learners, June 16, so there's no comparison, there's no Olympics of struggle credentials. I think also this speaks to the poverty of ideas in this ongoing battle for succession in the ANC. So instead of Lindiwe Sisulu coming forth and say, look, my presidency in the ANC will stand for 1, 2, and 3. This is my position on land expropriation. This is my position on
I want to come back to you and touch on the youth, particularly how much value they place on these struggle credentials. But let's just rope in Professor Duvenage. Professor, your take on this battle now of struggle credentials?
It's clear to me that this is an old struggle within the ANC. We had the old conflict between the exiles, the inciles, and the Robben Islanders. My point of view about this is that the ANC at the moment need to reconcile. It's not the time for identifying big differences, historically or otherwise. But it seems as if the movement has an inability to reconcile. And at several occasions, we are picking up that old differences start surfacing yet again. My view is that it is not important if you are exile or an incile or a Robben Islander. All of them contributed in their own way than the other.
No, thank you very much. Now on to the ANC. The ANC top structure in Mpumalanga has distanced itself from a campaign supposedly in support of Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa. That's ahead of the national conference. The Mpumalanga Provincial Executive Committee says it's not party to a Ramaphosa campaign to be held in the province. The PEC says provincial chairperson David Mabuza has no knowledge of the pro-Ramaphosa campaign. The PEC says the text message promoting the 28 October Ramaphosa event is a hoax. Mpumalanga is widely known to back Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma as a preferred candidate. Meanwhile, the provincial leadership has encouraged branches to continue meeting in a bid to unite the ANC. The latest development raises questions about who the province will support at the national conference in December.
As a PEC, we want to put it on record that we are distancing ourselves from that rally and are not going to attend because we were not supposed to attend anything that is outside the structures of the ANC. In the ANC, there are structures from branch level up until national. So the chairperson of the province will only attend any gathering that is organized by any of the structures, but not individuals that seeks to divide the organization towards the national conference, of course. We're just questioning our branches to say that we don't know anything about such a gathering. So, but anyone has got the right to do whatever gathering because we don't know even why they are meeting, the agenda.
We now cross over to our reporter Lemogang Foke, who's been following the ANC presidential race in Mpumalanga. Lemo, a warm welcome to you. Now, we understand there's a message that's being circulated of a Ramaphosa campaign event that's set to take place on the 28th of October. But it seems the PAC is refuting this, or at least distancing itself from that message that's being circulated. What exactly is happening there?
Good afternoon to you, Mfundo, and thank you very much. Indeed, you are correct that text message has been making the rounds on social media amongst many of those ANC members in Mpumalanga, basically just, lobbying members to attend this rally that is said to take place in Mbombela on the 28th, as you have already indicated, and also saying that Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa will be addressing that rally together with Didi Mabuza, who is the chairperson of Mpumalanga. Now, the PEC in Mpumalanga has obviously distanced themselves from that text message that is circulating on the social medias amongst their members, saying that when they came to be aware of the text message is when rather it was through a text message and not through formalized processes that we know of, and therefore do not support. And another reason that they do not support that kind of gathering in the name of CR17 is the fact that the province, as we know, has not pronounced any kind of support for any of the candidates that are currently running for presidency. We know that even the Youth League, the Youth League and the Women's League, compared to the national level in the province, what they're saying is that they're following the unity slate, which is, something that's very common in the province. The MKMVA structures also have their weight behind the province's unity slate, saying that, they respect the decisions that have been taken at national level. However, they stick as a province on this decision not to nominate, not to pronounce, and also saying that, they do respect other people's views on the preferred leadership that they want. However, they do not, they are not directly linked to any kind of events that are taking place in the name of other candidates. We also know, Mfundo, that Mpumalanga has not had any kind of intensified campaigns as we've seen other provinces. For instance, in Limpopo over the weekend, when Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma was campaigning, there's always there's been talks as well of David Mabuza being in Nkosazana Dlamini's slate. And when we sat down with the provincial secretary Mandla Ndlovu, he actually made it clear, saying that initially they had wanted David Mabuza to be part of to rather put him up as a possibility for a deputy president position. But after the chairperson reconsidered and came back to them and said, I think the interests of the organization at this point, in which is to push unity, is more important and, paramount and should take priority than the interests of the province. And therefore, there's never been talks about that. So at this point, it's highly unlikely that we might see any kind of gathering in CR17, in the form of CR17 or any other candidate for that matter. We do know that also Matthews Posa was in that province, campaigning here and there. But as far as the provincial PEC structure, there has not been any kind of link or direct to any candidate at this point. But I'm sure our analysts could provide some more analysis on this matter. This is something that we've also spoken to other analysts around Mpumalanga about, when we are trying to gauge the sense of the politics around that province. This is what they've said, things are likely to change, but until the province announces their official position, then we can never take what we're seeing, such as this text message that is making the round. So I think for now, seeing that they have released a press release saying that they do not form part of that gathering, that is the word that we will take until they give us any other notice.
No, Lemogang, thank you very much for that report. We'll certainly keep in touch as days progress. Jackie,
sure.
Your take on Mpumalanga. I mean, there's generally been silence there. It seems there's high discipline in Mpumalanga, and here we've been dubbing them the kingmakers, but there's nothing much coming there.
Sure. They seem to be somewhat keeping their cards very close to their chest. I know that initially there was no doubt that they were behind Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, and then we were surprised to learn that there had been some shift in terms of moving towards Cyril Ramaphosa. And then of late we've been hearing this unity slate or this unity thing, which is obviously represented by Zweli Mkhize,
So we believe.
Yeah, of course, that's what we've been told. But look, there's going to be a lot of these things. It's going to be a long way, hey? to December. So we must just brace ourselves that every other day, every other week, there's a lot of lobbying going on, formally, informally, within the structures and outside that. As you see, even events that are not endorsed or are not properly constituted by the structures of the organization. So yes, we are at the heart of the campaigning season. It's going to be a highly, highly contested conference in December. So I don't think that a lot of people will be playing the game by the rules. They're going to be very aggressive, dog eat dog. What's very sad is that it seems to be dominated by personalities. Everyone is selling personalities.
And less policy.
Less policy, less ideological direction. And it looked, for some of us, it seems as if the vast majority of these candidates are somewhat out of touch with the reality on the ground.
But we'll have to possibly soon enough give the candidates the opportunity to say what exactly are their policies. But on to the Northwest. Sure. Now, ANC branches in Northwest are starting to have conversations about their preferred candidates, and regional officials are helping with political education. Giovanni Machani filed this report for us.
It's all systems go for Northwest's roadmap to the 54th ANC National Conference. Branch members are being briefed on what is required of them in nominating and electing the organization's next leadership.
The Bokoni-Bophirima province is ready for now because we have just established the Regional Executive Committee of Ngaka-Mudirumema. They undergone induction. They received a workshop on how to run the BGMs, political education. They cascaded the information to the branches, to the sub-regions. So today we are here as the Regional Executive Committee of Ngaka-Mudirumema to ensure that information is cascaded as expected.
In anticipation of the debates and persuasions to take place, the Ngaka-Mudirumema region is keeping its preferred ANC leadership in mind.
We are pushing for radical economic transformation. We want there must be serious fundamental changes, more structures in the economy, systems, patterns of the economy, especially more issue ownership, management and control of the economy. We'll have to see poor in favor of the poor, women and youth.
On the road to the 54th National Conference, ANC, as well as its members, will be busy discussing and debating who they think is right to lead the African National Congress. This obviously led by maximum discipline and their political teachings. Giovanni Machani for ANN7, Bokoni-Bophirima.
And now we cross over to our reporter, Giovanni Machani. Gio, a warm welcome to you. We understand that the Deelpan region is actually, or has resolved to start off with some sort of political education ahead of the elective conference. What has been the rationale there? Did they find that some were lacking in terms of their political education?
Good afternoon to you, Mfundo, and good afternoon to the viewers. Yes, indeed, the political teachings within the ANC is very, very important, knowing that they have had 105 years of existence, the time frame and the generations that include themselves in this, what they call the revolutionary movement of the African National Congress, needs to be remembered. The kind of teachings, the kind of processes, the principles of how to hold yourself, not only as a member, but obviously with the obligation of serving a nation. We do know that sub-regions are holding meetings on the road to the bigger branch meetings where it will be discussed with them how nomination processes will take place. They will then go through with nominations, taking these names to the December conference where the ANC at large will be voting for their leadership going forward, and obviously the policies that will need to be implemented. We do know in these branch meetings, one cause of concern is the responsibility that the elected branch members going into December will now have, having to decide who will be the leadership, their policies, and also deciding the right kind of leadership. It has been stated that the candidates have to be in good standing with the organization. They should also have a minimum of 10 years unbroken membership, as well as no criminal records and any disciplinary findings. But with me to just tell us a bit more about what is happening here in the Northwest is Kagiso Palachonge, who is a PEC deployee in Dr. KK region. Thank you so much for joining us. You know, with all this responsibility that has now been given to branch members playing the leading role, what is the ANC looking forward for moving on?
Firstly, let me take this opportunity to greet the viewers at home. What we are doing currently as the ANC in Bokoni-Bophirima is that the PC deployees are now visiting the regions. We are currently at Dr. KK Kaunda with the branches of Matlosana. We are explaining the roadmap towards the 54th National Conference. As to what is it that is expected from the branches, today we have invited the branch chairpersons and branch secretaries. We are going to discuss that particular roadmap as to what is it that is expected from us in terms of starting from the invitation up to the end of the sitting of the BGM or the branch biannual general meeting, where at the end of the day, nominations and the discussions of the policy positions of the ANC are going to be discussed. Now, the purpose of today is to ensure that each and every member who has got the responsibility as the branch chairperson and branch secretary understands the roadmap, so that the implementation part of it should be something that all of us are going to do in the very same way.
And we do know last week, Friday, chaired by Honorable Suprama Humapilo, he spoke about these political teachings that need to be integrated into these delegates who are going to December. How is that important and why?
The event of our Provincial General Council of last week, Friday, was very successful. And as the ANC in Bokoni-Bophirima, we are very much pleased. Because over and above the wrong things that were said about the ANC in Bokoni-Bophirima, we have demonstrated that there is unity and our members are understanding the role that they must play as members of the ANC.
Thank you very much. So as you've heard, it has been a bag of mixed emotions going forward. Obviously, with the type of discipline that needs to take place within the African National Congress, we have seen a third player, come into it, being the courts, and on a national level, provincially as well. It has been decided that should there be any internal spats, may it be dealt with within the organization. So moving on, definitely the teachings are important, but the discipline also from the delegates who will be going through to December is also required.
Giovanni, thank you very much for joining us. Now, Professor Andre, to you, it seems like an interesting move to be holding perhaps political education ahead of the elective conference. Do you think that with this task that now lies with branches, they need to have that refresher course of what the ANC stands for and the type of candidate they should perhaps be preferring?
Yes, I'm feeling very strong about political education and political literacy. But unfortunately, there's always a way to misuse this for political propaganda and to get the right influences at the right place. Now, hopefully, this is not the case. But in a straight way, we need education, we need literacy, and that is not only true within the context of the ANC, that is true with regard to all citizens in South Africa. Even if we can just touch on the constitutional values, the values with regard to tolerance, I believe we can take the country forward. In that sense, it is the right way of going.
Now, Professor, just to take you back to our big topic today of the struggle credentials, just briefly, if we talk about South Africa, it's largely made up of the youth. Do you think they place that much of value on struggle credentials, or perhaps they're looking for credible leaders that will root out corruption and unemployment, and perhaps we see a decrease in crime?
Well, I think if we look at the generation that is in control of the ANC at the moment, it is the older generation. They are focusing on things like struggle credentials, etc. The youth, especially the youth in the cities, are focusing on completely different things. It's all about socio-economic challenges. It is about joblessness. It is about economic growth. It is about education. These are the priorities. In that sense, we are working with a generation gap within the context of the ANC, which is not unique to the ANC as an organization.
Jackie, your take? Are they missing the mark here? Because we're seeing less. Even when we're talking about these candidates, we're not seeing young people.
Yeah, indeed. There is an emphatic disconnect between what seems to, at the top of the consciousness of the leaders of the ANC, and it speaks to their age as well and their generation. There's a disconnect between that and what's actually happening on the ground in terms of young people. You look at movements like Fees Must Fall, Roads Must Fall, which place so much emphasis on education, you know, decolonizing the curriculum, socio-economic sort of issues affecting black youth in particular. And we're not hearing much of that coming out in terms of the internal discussions that are happening in the ANC. So this would have been more important in the early 90s, this idea of where were you pre-1994 when we were in exile and so on and so forth. There's been more than 2 decades of ANC governance having assumed the state apparatus, which it ought to have used to roll out socio-economic liberation. It has not happened. All indications, all statistics show very clearly that instead poverty has deepened, inequality has widened, and so on and so forth.
But why are we not hearing the voices of the likes of Vuyiswa Tulelo, the Ronald Lamulas? Where are they? Because there's still a lot of great young minds within the ANC, but we're not hearing much in terms of at least them saying we want to be at the forefront now because the country actually constitutes of more of the youth.
Sure. Well, 2 ways to look at it. One is that, you know, you had a similar situation in the ANC in the 1940s. The arrival into the burst into the political scene of figures like Anton Lembede, Oliver Tambo, Nelson Mandela in the mid-1940s, where there was a feeling that that generation of leaders of the ANC was also out of touch with what was happening on the ground, you know, the AB Umas and so on and so forth. And you had these young people coming in with this dynamism and saying, look, you're out of touch. This is how we should be moving. Some say the ANC somewhat missed that opportunity with the expulsion of Julius Malema, and since then, basically the voice of the youth, the radical voice of the youth in the ANC has been shut. I don't know. We've heard very little from Colin Maine, the current president of the ANC Youth League, and his leadership collective. And it boggles the mind, especially with so many things that have been happening with unemployment statistics that have been out disproportionately affecting young people, lack of access to education, you know, socioeconomic dislocation. One would have hoped to hear inside the ANC. That has also created a gap for the EFF to even go into that space, because now the voice of youth inside the ANC, radical youth, militant and resolute, somewhat has been muzzled. We don't know if it's been muzzled or the current leadership led by Colin Maile just chooses to be quiet. But they need to respond to this immediately if they don't want to lose more of young people who are then swayed by this message coming from elsewhere.
Professor, how do they arrest this problem now and somehow connect with the youth? Just in closing, briefly.
Well, my take on it is that the ANC need to change its structure. It cannot be a freedom movement anymore. It need to reposition itself as a social democratic party, and it need to address socio-economic issues like unemployment, like health, like education, addressing the need of the majority of people that are under the age of at least 30 years at the moment. That is one of the big challenges for the ANC. They need to restructure, they need to reorganize, and in a sense, they need to change the fundamentals of the idea of the national democratic revolution.
No, Professor, thank you very much. Now, on to our poll question this week. The question is, should the ANC government make tertiary education free for all? Give us your views on our Twitter handle. It's at ANN7TV, or visit our website. It's www.ann7.com. And that's where we end today's show. Until next time.